Everybody, early arrivers, thanks for joining us. We're gonna give it a couple 3 minutes here just to let people kind of filter in here, but appreciate everybody promptly being here. It's nice to see some names that are new and both familiar. Water and coffee, dangerous combo. I hope I make it through the whole webinar without having to make a pit stop. All right, I think about time to get started. So I wanted to first thank everybody for joining us here. Thanks for joining the latest IVOXY webinar, Locking the Front Door, Email Security with IVOXY, Proofpoint and Rubrik. So my name is Matt Yette. I am a Senior Solutions Architect with IVOXY Consulting. Before we get started, I want to go through a little housekeeping. That's me. That's my tomorrow, 2 days, she'll be a 15-month-old, my 15-month-old daughter, Maeve. So I'll talk a little bit about myself in a moment, but a couple of things to get out of the way. To you first 10 people who joined, thank you very much for your promptness. We'll be sending out DoorDash cards to you. Jimmy's taking care of that. You'll probably receive them middle of the day in a little bit here. So thank you again for being prompt. So we're muting all attendees' microphones, all cameras, just to eliminate possible distractions and all of that. So the good thing is we will be using Q&A, the Q&A panel, the chat panel. All of these are up here in front of me. Jimmy's assisting me on that too. So if you have questions throughout, please do feel free to drop them whenever. I will do my best to get to them and answer them on demand. If not, maybe at the end of a little section. Or at the end, and all else fails, we'll follow up via email for sure. But would love to make this as interactive as you want it to be. I'm happy to sit up here and chat. I'm happier to sit up here and chat and answer questions too. So please feel free to, don't be shy. Let's see. Yeah, myself, if you don't know me, again, I've been with IVOXY. It'll be in 10 years here in May. So like a lot of my colleagues, I come from operations. I don't do a lot of sales focused stuff in my history. If you look at my resume, so I very much come from the mindset that there are challenges that we op folks have to deal with. Every penny that I put towards those challenges should be spent in the best possible way. I've always treated the technologies that I'm in charge of, even though I'm not the owner of a company, that's my money. So I want to say, hey, look at the value boss that I'm providing. So that's really the mindset that it's served me well at IVOXY, and to have that sort of freedom that allows me to operate in a way that's true to my raison d'etre. And then the countless relationships that I now have with so many people at so many different companies, it serves as a testament to that. So yeah, again, about the comments and feedback, if anything comes up, please feel free to let me know. Another thing, we will be giving away at the conclusion of this webinar 2 Ember mugs and a Yeti cooler. Not Yeti cooler, but a much better version of a Yeti cooler. And the Ember mugs are awesome too. And I have one, and don't lose your charger. That's all I'm going to say. Don't lose your charger, because right now I would be showcasing it and no, it's not charged. Anywhere, they're great. Keep your temperature. Who doesn't want a coffee mug with an app? Okay. That's fantastic. So without further ado, locking the front door. So I'm going to start off by talking about Proofpoint. We're going to be talking about Proofpoint and Rubrik and how they, both can go towards securing the kind of the wild west of security, and that's email. So I'm going to start talking about Proofpoint. Now, Proofpoint, via their own words, they help organizations protect their people. And from my point of view, those are both our company's most coveted and dangerous asset. And you're going to see me going back to the people angle a lot here, the user angle. Proofpoint's integrated cloud-based suite of people-centric cybersecurity, information protection, and compliance solutions helps mitigate today's security and compliance risks, and it goes to the people, the users. I'm going to dive a bit deeper into how their approach to email security really is a game changer, and I'm very excited about it. So it's email. What's the big deal, right? I'm going to post a poll question here. Boom. Okay. So, email is based on SMTP. The protocol's been around for 40 years. It's message transmission, right? But everything we do to try to secure it, authentication, authorization, encryption, SSL, TLS, binary data transfer, all of these things, they're all bolt-on technologies to a very old car. Now, if I could just tear it all down and say, that's it, we're going to build a secure email, there is no backwards compatibility, right? And you think about how many email systems are out there and emails are sent, it's almost impossible. It'd be like Microsoft saying, you know what? We're going to absolutely deprecate all old Windows technologies and start new and expect to stay in business. It's almost an impossible ask. So you need to basically take your best shot and leverage technologies to secure this almost insecurable protocol. And it really is up to you to protect and ensure that the integrity of your email, that's absolutely critical. And it's not built into the protocol. So some of the threats that we're dealing with here, really, there's a couple aspects. There's fraud, I think, and then there's ransomware. I'm going to start out by talking about fraud. And this is something that even at IVOXY, we've seen attempts at this, and it's crazy. So as fraudsters, they get more sophisticated. We're seeing, and it's called BEC, right? Business email compromise. But I'm guessing plenty of you have seen gift card scams or payroll diversion. Supplier invoicing fraud is a scary one because that might not even completely be in your control, right? So, gift carding is that popular scam. The attacker asks the target, hey, can you purchase one or more multiple high value gift cards? Then they give me the number on the card. all of that. We've seen this at IVOXY, and prior to the fact that we leverage proof points, this is before, but we've seen those attempts, right? Thankfully, we have a pretty sharp employee base at IVOXY, but that's, I mean, we're a tech company, not everybody is. And, you know, all it takes is one user, right? There's payroll diversion. So that's an attempt to defraud a company by manipulating a user to modify their payroll system. Go and redirect this employee's paycheck or impersonate the boss and say, you know, send in this, you know, make an alter, do a bonus payment. Supplier invoice fraud, that's a more sophisticated attack, but they'll impersonate a vendor and then send an invoice to accounts payable and say, hey, you bought this yesterday. This is the invoice for it. And depending on the workload, depending on the dollar amount, it might be under the radar. I don't need approval for that. Sure, there you go, and pay it. That can be really, really bad. There's mergers and acquisitions fraud. Shipment redirect is a rerouting attack where the fraudster, they intercept the purchase confirmation email, and then they contact the merchant and say, no, send it over here. Now they get free goods, and then they can fence that on the black market or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely there. It's the Wild West out there, and there are a lot of attempts to control it. But again, the impact, should things go wrong, are really, really detrimental, right? So there is more than just, I mean, ultimately everything affects the bottom line, right? I mean, it's about dollars and cents, about the health of the company, but there are so many things that don't directly associate with that, but then do indirectly affect it. Things like brand impact, right? Or the time it takes to recover or investigate. So all of those things are things we're trying to avoid, right? So you're looking at these numbers here, these statistics, right? There's lies and statistics, but in this case, I don't think anybody's looking at bad numbers associated with email threats as anything more than the truth and a real fear. So you've got, you know, your financial exposure, and it's top of mind for everybody. I mean, the cost of lost opportunity, a ransomware payoff, a fraudulent wire transfer, bank account details, the list goes on. So everything comes back to financials, right? But ultimately, you see in the last 6 years, between 2016 and 2021, $43 billion in email fraud. It's stunning. And I'll talk more about this later and hit on this point, but you can buy magic product X. It doesn't mean a thing if you have determined users that just, knowingly or not, kind of go around that. Brand impact's another big one. I mean, a lot of times, let's say there's been a ransomware attack, and let's say you pay it, and let's say you get your data back. That's not zero. Let's say the ransomware, you give them $1. Here you go, I'm done. Okay, great. The reputational damage to the company may be immeasurable, right? That kind of thing is just yet another reason to, at all costs, avoid this and get ahead of things. And then you've got the time to investigate, right? You've got your full-time employees that aren't sitting around idling, twiddling their thumbs on a normal day. So what they're supposed to be getting done isn't getting done when they're scrambling, they're investigating. And it's not even like a compromise or ransomware. It's, oh, there's an issue. This is what happened. I'm going to work on fixing it. There's that lead time, the fog of war, to get yourself out from underneath and say, what happened? Where is the leak? Where I got to plug it? And that kind of thing all adds to time. And that's, you know, at that time, that ticker can be going, the damage can be adding up. You're talking $5,600 per minute on average when you're down, when a company is down. I mean, can your company survive a day of that? Can it survive a week of that? It's unbearable. Okay, so another poll question I've got coming up here is, let's see, the ransomware aspect, right? So I don't know about you, and this probably goes to more personal accounts, but you get those emails, you were part of a breach. Now, I was, my wife and I use minted.com. I don't know if anybody uses it out there, but I love the service they offer because it's like my address book. We sent out our wedding invitations. When it's time for Christmas cards, check the box. And that's great. And in fact, that might be one of the more critical types of accounts that got hacked. Well, I got an email a couple years ago. All this stuff got hacked, which means not only my account credentials, which if you have password manager and all of that, you're fine. But now that's got addresses of all of my friends in there. That's not a good thing. That's a very bad thing. So, you know, depending on where you've got accounts, these compromises, they're all over the place, and it doesn't need to be huge companies either. It's brutal. I mean, so look at this chart here. I hope everybody can see it all right, but on the right side, you're looking at the attack vector by company size. So if you're less than 10 employees, your primary level of compromise is like an RDP over the internet, which I would hope that anybody over 10 employees, everybody over 1 employee is not opening RDP to the internet, but here we are. It happens. But once you get between 11 and 100 employees, it turns into a coin flip on email is now at least 50% of the vector for ransomware. So I'm guessing everybody in this room right now is above that threshold, which means you have a better than 1 in 2 chance of ransomware attack being via email. And as you see, your average is 75% of all ransomware starts with email. And it's my favorite thing to kind of say here. If you could wave a magic wand and say email fraud is done. Email is 100% secure. Nobody can socially engineer anyone through email. Nothing. It's good. What does global fraud look like tomorrow? It's gone. It's half. It's evaporated. If you could spend $1 on security, my feeling is spend it on email. And that's not to say that other methods of that security onion aren't important, but my goodness. And so the other part of the ransomware thing that I think has also been a shift is 5-6 years ago, you were Target, right? I think, I don't want to, one of the insurance companies, I don't want to say the wrong one, be wrong. And somebody on the insurance company is on this call and rings me up, but you always associated these hacks with big companies. Well, now I look at the ransomware thing as how important is your data to you? So if I go, I'm going to put on my black hat for a minute and say, I'm a bad guy and I'm going to go after Target. Well, Target's got a security department. They probably got contacts with the FBI. They could probably spin up a federal investigation very quickly. All of these things, right? So maybe the reward is big, but the risk is also, relatively large. But, and I say mom and pop, I don't mean mom and pop, but I mean not an enterprise corporate entity. So 100, 200, 300, 500 employees. They certainly probably don't have a robust security staff. Maybe they have an FTE dedicated security. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But if I was to crypto lock their entire data, it is now a matter of life and death if that company is able to unlock its data. So it's not so much like, oh, I want that data, it's worth a lot to me. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe they do something that really is the only game in town. There's no competitor to learn from it, whatever. But if I could just turn you off and I say, pay me or I won't turn you back on, or the company goes under, at that point, your data is a matter of life and death to you and your company. So I'm going to pay the ransomware. So it's not so much, oh, I'm small. What's it, man? Who wants my data? It's actually not who wants your data, who wants to stop you from accessing your own data. And at that point, the answer is everybody's data is super important to them. And I think that's where we need to, I almost have to apologize on calls when I talk about it. I'm not trying to spit FUD or fear and uncertainty and doubt. I'm not trying to scare you. And I'm not trying to talk about the boogeyman. It's just a reality that we all have to deal with now. I've actually been very, very diligent internally to make sure that we are secure. It's something that we all have to deal with. So really, the problem is, I'm going to pick on them again. Your users are leaving the front door wide open. So, and again, this is not meant to say your users are bad people. They're doing this on purpose, but it goes to the point of there are most valuable assets and our most dangerous assets, because social engineering is a thing that continues to, it will never go away. It goes back to, what was it? Back in the 70s and 80s, I think Steve Wozniak was part of it, the whole, the phreaking, the phone system hacking, where they would call and talk to an operator and convince them that they were doing something that was legitimate, and they'd get free long distance or whatever, stuff like that. It's as old as time, and it's going to continue to happen. So, basically that human weakness is always going to be there. And these technologies that I'm about to talk about briefly, they're great technologies, and they address a lot of technical things, and they don't address human weakness. So, okay, great. front door. So all right, security, here's your onion, right? Hey, I've got a great firewall, next generation. I have endpoint, protection and detection. So I'm keeping up to date on that. I'm using something like Microsoft Intune for my endpoint management. I've got MFA set up. I'm using Architect for managed detection and response. I'm collecting logs. I'm auditing events. I've got immutable backups with Rubrik. Great. But what I like to call Proofpoint, and I would talk to Proofpoint about this in an event that I was at last week in Portland, and they liked that. I'm going to see if I can trademark it, the user firewall. That's how I look at Proofpoint. It's basically protection against your most vulnerable asset is your users. If I could somehow put a social engineering firewall, any kind of communication, and a lot of that's email, if I can wrap them in this Kevlar blanket, I'm going to try to do that. So I look at it as a firewall for your users. It takes the most dangerous parts of your network, the users, and it puts that blanket on them. So you protect them from threats by proactively leveraging real-time prevention and predictive intelligence. So the nice thing is about, an email solution that has global reach, you might, again, I'm going to go say you're a 100-person company. You are, let's say, in the financial industry, but one of the big investment banks, Fortune 100, Fortune 50, sees this threat, and Proofpoint analyzes it, detects it. Now they filter those rule sets out. And as a smaller company, you get to benefit by catching it, by being protected against a 0-day that would have gotten through in one of the big guys. You prevent the users from acting on threats. This is the big one. You prevent them from acting on threats that might still reach them, right? Because you can't assume the technical solution fixes all. You can do as good of a job as you can, but you still need to what if. And that's the part about educating them over time. And I like to call it creating a healthy skeptic, right? My favorite thing in the world is when I get a message from one of my coworkers on Slack and they say, hey, Matt, I got this email. Is this spam? What do you think? This looks a little, well, first of all, bravo and kudos for having that kind of nose to say something doesn't seem right. And I think part of that is intuition, but you can't fall back on that, right? It's education, it's awareness. And so I love it. There's no hyperbole here. I mean, 31% of companies close after falling victim to ransomware. So we've got 16 attendees here. If all of us got hit with ransomware, 5 of us are gone. That's just the reality of it statistically. Now, not anybody on this call, because we're going to take steps to make sure we're protected, right? But yeah, I mean, the time for hurt feelings is long past. It's literally a matter of life and death for your company to shield itself from ransomware. And that all starts and ends, I think, in a way, at the front door. And your users, every time they get an email, they open that front door big time. So this, again, going on the theme of the user firewall, Proofpoint does some very interesting things, because in the past, and I've been doing email stuff for 22 years. It's always been kind of like, oh, I got a spam assassin filter and I've got Clam AV plugged in or McAfee for my antivirus and I'm good. And there needs to be more contextual awareness in the actual mail flow. And I think that's really where Proofpoint has made a difference. And they use a term called very attacked people, or VAPs. So it goes right to the quick of that user firewall concept. Rather than simply treating all email the same, filtering on like a set of global non-contextual rules, Proofpoint's able to go a lot deeper, down to the level of like, who's that party that's attacking me? So given that they are the global leader in providing email security, and I think it's something like 80% of the Fortune 100 are Proofpoint customers. So that normally I'm not interested in advertising like, hey, all these enterprises use this. If I'm not talking to an enterprise, right? If I'm talking to a medium business, what an enterprise use might not be that applicable. Everybody has email. So it's a global game. So that I find that number very impressive. The 8 out of 10 Fortune 100 companies use Proofpoint, right? So, I mean, you can only imagine how many emails they see and act upon on a daily basis. So they take all that data and they correlate it down to specific, this is cool, specific threat actors. So they can say, oh, that email that went through, that was actually from our evil. And this was the campaign they were running. And this is the malware they're using. And these are the techniques. And these are the industries they're hitting. So yes, they're targeting the financial industry with this. You're part of the financial industry. And these are your very attacked people. So they can tailor and say, whoa, CFO at a financial company is going to be under increased attack from these type of campaigns. And they tune their filtering to, make sure that you're, you're more protected. Same like medical industry. Well, it knows that the certain medical terms might be weird in the financial, target, but under hospitals, that's more normal. So there's different contextual, approaches to how that looks. So the screenshot's a bit small. I'm sorry about that. But what you're looking at right now is a list of users that are considered very attacked people. But not only the list, those bars along the side, it shows what kind of threats. So you got things like, banking or consumer credential phishing or malware, keyloggers, all kinds of categories of malicious email traffic. And it breaks it in. And it looks like Emily Martinez, our public sector account manager, is the top recipient. And you can use this information and go further and say, okay, Emily, let's see if you've clicked on any of those, and then you can act on that. More about that in a little bit. It provides enormous intelligence and visibility. Right now, I find, okay, Microsoft 365, a lot of you are on that. Great. The built-in Exchange Online protection, so black. I mean, tell me a little bit about what that's doing in the efficacy of that filtering. And I would be impressed if somebody can get up there and say, let me tell you, Matt, what we're doing, but let me tell you what they're doing and how great it's just, it really is one of those, they hope it's good enough, and it's not. So very attacked people are, they're targeted by threats. They have access to valuable data, and they work in high risk ways. That Venn diagram, if you're in the center of that, you're really considered, a very attacked person. You don't need to be a part of all three, but typically that's what that looks like. Okay, so this poor guy in the middle, if you see this, he actually looks ripped, so I don't want to pick on him too much, but he definitely drew the short straw because he represents that user that we've been talking about. He knows better. He doesn't need to attend the trainings. He's a clicker. Oh, I see a link. I'm going to click on that. He sees links. He clicks links. The login form needs his credentials. Again, yeah, it's okay. No problem. I'll fill in that. I'll log in. I got those credentials written down right here in this Post-it note under my keyboard. And so anytime you see this guy with the goatee, he's one of those users. Okay. So when you think of all the ways an email user's at risk, you might think about email, incoming email as the thing, the only thing to worry about. But I mean, this slide shows you that, like Peter Venkman's laundry in Ghostbusters 2, there are many subtle levels. You got the big one, external email, but what about internal? A lot of people, Susie from accounting emailed me. That says IVOXY.com. That's her, right? You trust your coworkers. You should, right? Or you think you can take that without worrying about it too, but hold on. Vigilance is still key. And there's cloud accounts, personal email, web browsing, and that's a big one. What does web browsing have to do with email? I'd say a ton. And Proofpoint actually has, it's my favorite thing to talk about the Proofpoint. And Proofpoint is another, a multi-layered solution. But I'm going to talk about that one in a little bit more, the web browsing. So it's called targeted attack protection. And so the important thing here, and this is why this poll question pops up right now, is a lot of times you think, okay, if a user's web browsing, how do I get my arms around even web browsing if the user's like at home? And the answer is a lot. What I'm talking about here is going to be a lot cleaner than you might think is what I'm going to talk about. So that entire concept of very attacked people and identifying the users in email intelligence, that's what Proofpoint calls targeted attack protection, or TAP. And I'm going to try not to acronym you to death, but it's funny, TAP, URL isolation of a app. Yeah, say that a few times fast, and maybe there'll be a gift card at the end of it for you. So URL isolation, this is really what I want to talk about. URL isolation. It's a component of the targeted attack protection that enables your users to confidently browse unknown websites while still protecting them from URL and web-based attacks. With this integration, any URL that's clicked on within the corporate email by your very attacked people, it'll be analyzed and isolated per the configured policy. Your people confidently access these websites from their corporate email, knowing that the organization is secure. So this is really cool. Okay. Does anybody out there, and I know you, maybe you can raise your hand. Does anybody remember Blue Coat from like the early 2000s? So I worked at a local integrator back when I lived in upstate New York. And again, early 2000s, Windows XP era, malicious websites, worms, everything. They were all the rage, right? So we partnered up with a company called Blue Coat, and it was really awesome. It was an on-premise web proxy is how we used it at our customers. And we would install it. We'd go to the firewall. We'd say, any traffic going out on port 80, turn around, you're going through this. And it was kind of like a web sense filter. It categorized traffic. You could, and what it really did was it said, this is a malware site and we're going to not let you get there. So it was one of those, reverse proxy servers, basically. So, it was great. It was effective. And then the dot-com bubble burst, and they got very expensive, and people realized this is a great product, but I can't afford to renew it. And then ultimately, Symantec bought them. Exactly. So think about that traffic, though, that funneling that traffic through an intelligent gateway, and that's on the lookout for threats. Now, take that early 2000s concept of working in the office, knock the walls down. How do you protect today's modern office? 62% of you are working from home right now. Great. You probably are logged in from your own computer. Maybe you have an antivirus. Maybe you don't. Maybe it's controlled by the company. Maybe it's not. So, okay, how do you, being in charge of user security in some shape or form, get your arms around that, especially when it comes to email? And the answer is targeted attack protection, URL isolation. So through its integration with targeted attack protection, the URL isolation can isolate the URLs in the emails sent to your riskiest users. So you probably see this in 365. Safe links, I think it's called. I might be misnaming that, but ultimately it grabs a URL, it puts something in front of it. It runs through whether, hey, has anything flagged this so far? And then, no, you're not on the list, and it lets the URL through. And that's that. Well, when an isolated browser session is triggered, so basically Proofpoint does something similar. They'll hijack the URL and grab it. But here's what's really cool. What happens is the user gets an email, and let's say that URL is malicious. Let's just assume that in this case, but it's so brand new, it just got set up, and the domain's been around a while, because Proofpoint will do an awful lot to hopefully not get to this point where you say, oh, it's 0 days, so what are you going to do? Well, Proofpoint uses behavioral analytics and AI and ML to basically say, yeah, but that domain was registered yesterday. It's probably bogus. Someone's already sending a link out. So they might catch that in the first place. But let's just assume, for whatever reason, it gets through. So the email still has that, the link still has that Proofpoint URL in front of it. So you click on it. So here's the great part about that. It will open up a new window just like it would normally clicking on a URL. But instead of it going to the website, it will actually go to a Proofpoint website. And then inside that Proofpoint website, it almost looks like it's a nested browser. Kind of like it's not an iframe, but it looks like an iframe, right? Where it's basically in a browser window masquerading as a browser with its own URL bar and everything. So what you're doing there is you're effectively emulating a web browser. And when you emulate the web browser and the actual target site is within that emulated browser, now you can wrap controls around it if you're Proofpoint, and by extension, you who are configuring these policies. So what Proofpoint can do is say, that's great. Depending on the user, even finance, in what situation would I ever want my finance people to click a link in an email and then upload a document to that? And maybe the answer is that happens from time to time, but only on these sites. So I can whitelist these sites. Or maybe the answer is never. You can block uploads and downloads to that website. This is my favorite part coming up, though, too. Login form masquerading is a huge problem, right? You pop up, oh, that looks official. That looks like my 365 login. I'm going to do that. Well, 365, chances are you all are using it for SSO. So it's not only one login, it's the login for all of your applications that tie in with that. Okay, you don't want that compromised. Well, I just have that link and it says, oh, and this looks like a legit login. And a lot of people, I guess I'll log in again. I thought I was already logged in. You can actually prevent users from entering text into input fields with this protection. So, I mean, that might be very much a thing where if you want to go to your expense account website. I'll go to my expense account website and log in myself. Boom. But a link sent to me that looks, like it might be the expense account site. I click on it. Now it wants me to log in. I mean, that to me sounds like a behavior you don't want to see happen through email. That right there prevents a lot of that phishing, a lot of that spoofing, if you can basically neuter the web browsing session and once somebody clicks on the email. Because I go to thinking, and obviously everybody works differently depending on what department you're in, but I think about it and I think, I don't have any emails I get in websites that really, I act upon. If anything, I can go out, bring up on a web browser, go to the actual website that I know that I'm typing the right URL in for, and go from there. So, and that really, to me, is one of the most exciting parts of what Proofpoint does. And that happens regardless of whether you're working from home, VPN, no VPN, mobile device. That's all done at the cloud level in the email itself. So it really doesn't require any endpoint technology to be installed. It's fantastic to me. It's something that I get very excited about. So the other part of this, that's technology, right? That's great. And I think that really spells out a great approach to the technology solution, right? Because you have to do the best you can with technology. That to me screams, a fantastic approach to doing it. But again, you've got that user firewall to worry about, that human weakness. So the other side of that is the security awareness training. I'm not an educational content developer. I'm in IT. I'm in charge of this. Even if I could put together some training, how do I customize the content? There are countless types. I talked about some of the threat campaigns earlier on in the webinar. I mean, how do you stay on top of that? New threats. You're probably not putting together a curriculum, right? How do you differentiate between those types of attacks and target that training to fit the users that need the specific kind of training? It's a challenge. So this is a screenshot. I hope everybody can see it, and it's a lot. So don't worry about, picking any single one out. But Proofpoint has a security awareness training program, and they take ownership of that security awareness and training from start to finish, and they're constantly updating that curriculum. So take it from the people who see, billions of emails a day, and be able to target, those training programs against where those weaknesses lie, right? So not only are the burden's taken off of you worrying about, listen, I have to stay up to date on all of these threats, but usually when you start with Proofpoint on that, within 2 weeks, you're up and running and you've got your training cadence going. So throughout the program, Proofpoint's experts at email will have regularly scheduled consultative sessions with your team. They report on progress. They show you actionable data and suggested next steps. So it allows you to deploy a comprehensive program without that administrative burden or those deployment tasks. And you get to stay on top of current trends on those attack techniques I talked about. All of that is handled by the experts at Proofpoint, who really, they live to stay on top of that landscape and the right tool for the job, right? So cui bono, right? Who benefits from something like this? And this is kind of the tough part, in that how many of you have sat through, how many have sat through a webinar, listening to some guy draw on, wait a minute, forget I asked that. But I mean, how many of us have been tasked with training or onboarding or whatever, and you just sit there and the eyes are glazing over? You can schedule weekly training, and all that means is that you've just trained a bunch of people to tune you out once a week. I think that really is a threat here. So what happens to make Proofpoint different in their approach is that, first of all, you as a company can apply that any way you want. I personally like to consider the concept of gamification. Listen, if you snag and identify something, you should $5 Starbucks gift card, stuff like that really goes to it. Maybe there's like a leaderboard or something like that, but their training is bite-sized. It's meant to be 5 to 15 minutes a piece. It's not this long, constant thing. It's done in a way where you can randomly do it. So if everybody knows, be on the lookout, it's the last day of the month, that training, that fake email's coming in, that's not doing you any good either. So I really like that, the bite-sized stuff, the randomization of it, and the targeted nature of it. So this is what's really cool. I showed you before the very attacked people and how, okay, Carol in accounting clicked on this. This was a threat. It got through, and she clicked on it. Now we caught it with the tab isolation, the URL isolation. Great, no harm. But Carol clicked on that. It records that and says, and this was the type of campaign it was. Let's target Carol with some specific training to try to shape that behavior and improve her awareness and skepticism of this type of campaign. So it's not just like blast and everybody's checked the box, everyone's done the training. It's actually tailored to the weaknesses that our users have voluntarily showed. I have found that to be just really impressive, because anybody can say, here's the book, read it, quiz will be at the end of the class. But if you can actually target that, it's not just cover, it's just not CYA. I think a lot of it can be seen as CYA. Everybody's taking the class, but if you can say this person has this weakness, and we can show because they clicked on 3 links in the last month of this type, let's give them this type of training. All of that is tied together. Again, that user firewall concept, utilizing information from different parts of the email workflow to improve everybody's posture. That's a really high level showcase of some of the things that Proofpoint does. It's really impressive to me. I just find, like I say, you go into where you're going to spend your money on security, and that whole aspect of, if you could lock down email tomorrow, global fraud evaporates on a massive scale. It's a very impressive approach of what they've done. And I do like the fact that they're not looking at getting into endpoint antivirus or, a lot of the other layers of the security onion. Some companies, they try to, encompass, but if you had the same vendor for everything, that takes one compromise of that vendor and your entire security layer stack is blown up. So I like right tool, right vendor for the job. And Proofpoint has really shown that people-centric approach is a difference maker. Anybody who's out there on Office 365, by the way, I say Office 365, Microsoft 365, sorry. Proofpoint has a really cool free way to get an answer to, it's like, what if, okay, fine, I have done 365. What does 365 with Proofpoint in front of it look like? And that's called the Rapid Risk Report. It doesn't alter your mail flow whatsoever. It's like a 5-minute setup thing. So you have to be on Microsoft 365 for this. But again, it's a 5-minute setup, and it gives you an instant 2-week history of your mail flow in terms of, this is the type of email that got through, was delivered in your mailbox. And it basically plays a what if game. If you had Proofpoint, this is the additional stuff that would have been filtered out. So it's putting their money where their mouth is, really. And that all of that is free. It's fantastic. It showcases the types of threats you're using or your users are receiving. It gives a fantastic picture of the difference Proofpoint would make, right? So if you're interested in getting the Rapid Risk Report, commitment free, price free, cost free, reach out to me, your IVOXY account manager, anybody IVOXY, and definitely let me know. So that is what I had to say about Proofpoint, and wanted to thank very much the Proofpoint folks for helping us out with that. And what's great is that we've really built up quite a nice relationship with them, and talking to a number of their internal staff. They even have a technical resource specifically for partners. So her name's Darla Teeter. She was on, I think it's the latest released episode of Data Center Therapy, our podcast. And she's just been a great resource. And I like it that, any company that we partner with at IVOXY, there are a lot of reasons we do it. But ultimately, we're in an advantageous position to say, hey, we've got a lot of people who want to do business with us because we have a good reputation in the industry as a very trusted consulting partner. And we're spoiled with that. And so from that standpoint, we are representing our partners as well. And the nice thing is, when that partner goes and extends an internal technical resource, let's say you open a ticket with so-and-so and it's just not happening. We can pull on that internal technical resource. They can make hay on their end and move things along. That's happy customers, those relationships. That's what makes my job amazing. The last thing I want to do is talk about a solution, sell a product or service or whatever, a solution, and have you come back a year later, 6 months later, and say, Matt, it wasn't it. That I'd lose sleep. That truly. So we're very blessed to have these partners. And so thank you very much for Proofpoint on that. And that brings me to Rubrik, and the same applies in terms of a long relationship. I think IVOXY and Rubrik have been working together for 6 or 7 years now. It's been a fantastic synergistic relationship. and they came along at just the right time. So with Rubrik, when all else fails, you need a fail-safe, and that fail-safe, drum roll, can't fail, right? I'm talking about immutability. You hear about it far too often. My backups got encrypted too. What? It's tell me you weren't a Rubrik customer without saying you weren't a Rubrik customer is my answer. Really, I mean, true data protection starts and stops with immutability. Full stop. If your backups, if they can be modified, encrypted, erased, that's an attack vector. A lot of it tied in with social engineering, and it will bite you. And so by focusing on true immutability, even down to what I call the golden eye feature. Now, Barbara Broccoli and the Bond estate will not license this, I'm sure, to anybody, but I like it called the golden eye because you not only need to vet, like you can say, look, I don't want to be able to delete my backups. The only quote unquote avenue to destroy my old backups is deleting it because I can't change them. I can't overwrite them. I can't crypto lock them, but I can delete them. You can even say, you know what? Take that feature away from me. And now if I want to delete something, I can do a 2-person rule. I have to have 2 people from my company call Rubrik support, validate my identities, and then Rubrik support has to say, yeah, good on their end. Everyone turns the key at the same time, and you can purge older backups. So you're really protected against all that kind of attack vector, right? So that's true immutability. And that very concept extends to their Microsoft 365 protection. So I've got a poll coming up here. Pretty easy. And this is, of course, if you're on Microsoft 365, but are you backing up your data right now? And so one of the common misconceptions about the cloud is everything's taken care of for you, right? Uptime, hardware refreshes, patching, administration of users, right? What? That's not done too? No, not quite. And certainly not protecting the data itself. Now, a lot of IT leaders assume that their cloud providers have assured backup in place. That's a dangerous assumption that can result in data loss. The cloud provides, the providers, if you read the terms and conditions, they state that data protection in the cloud is a shared responsibility between you, the customer, and the cloud provider. The Microsoft Services Agreement itself, they take this a step further and state that you should, quote, regularly back up your content and data you store on the services or store using third-party apps and services. Rubrik is the third-party app and service for Microsoft 365 protection. 365 goes a long way in providing resilient access to your data, right? They want to make it available, but in terms of backing it up and protecting against data loss, you're on your own. I mean, well, you were at least. Now Rubrik takes care of it for you. But at the core of the Rubrik for Microsoft 365 solution is the belief that a data protection architecture should share similar principles to the product it's protecting. This is key because I've seen a lot of 365 backup products pull it back on premise. Well, now I got to provide a place to store it. And what happens if how do I rehydrate that or restore it? Pulling stuff from a cloud platform back on premise, it seems to be like a backwalk, a moonwalk back from this progress that you've achieved. So that means for Microsoft 365, the world's productivity cloud, a traditional on-premises design was a non-starter for Rubrik. But that powerful simplicity that Rubrik provides, that should persist. So this is, I mean, it's fantastic. And I'm actually going to go through a demo of setting this up. So it's funny. Traditionally at IVOXY, we design and implement a ton of solutions. And usually, not always, but usually that means there is some professional services, white glove professional services included with it. And we're very much not a enjoy your new toy. It's over there in the corner. Have fun with it, right? It's not that at all. We are very much shoulder to shoulder with our customers, and we want to make sure that any money spent is spent well. And that usually means some hand-holding, some training, the education, the assessment and the design, all of those things that are part of our credo goes forward. So we've done a ton of Microsoft 365 protection by Rubrik. And I remember early on, one of my account managers said to me, and of course, this is a reflex, how much time should I include on that quote for the installation? Because usually it's like at least a day, right? Maybe a half day if it's something very small, but there's real time involved with setting up these solutions. I said, give me a 15-minute WebEx and we'll be done with it. And do not charge them for it because it's that simple. So I'm excited to show this to you. So the setup is minutes. So Rubrik leverages an industry standard, the modern authentication, to establish a secure connection with your 365 subscription. So all users and organizations, they're automatically discovered. You can begin assigning policies immediately. Minimize vulnerability as protection assigned at the subscription level is automatically inherited by all managed users. That's nice. So you don't have to, I've got 1,000 users. Great. No, you can tick at the top and have it inherited. You can still specify different types of retention or frequency too on a per user basis if you want. So again, global scale, there's that policy management. It's the same. If you're already a Rubrik customer, you know about the SLA policy. If you're not a Rubrik customer, SLA was Rubrik's real game changer on top of the immutability to how do I back up? Everyone's used to, okay, this job runs at 10 o'clock and I'm backing up these things. It's got to be done by 11 because now I'm backing up these things and hopefully I get it done by my morning window or I've skipped that backup. Rubrik takes that out and says, give me the boundaries of how you want to protect your data. I've got a bucket that says this stuff needs to be protected once a day. These things need to be protected once every 12 hours. These things only need to be protected once a week. And you can assign folders, tags, individual items into those buckets. And Rubrik just makes it so. It's integrated with your virtual environment, so it knows to be a good citizen. If it sees that I/O load is high, latency on the storage array is high, it backs off. It'll take it easy, but it will make sure that that thing that's supposed to be protected every 24 hours is protected every 24 hours. Because that's really, we're so used to these old legacy backup paradigms where it's like, oh, I got to get my job at Friday at 10. But really what you need to do is you need to make sure it's protected weekly. So it takes that concept and applies it to 365. On top of that, the point in time snapshots, the browsing, searching, what Rubrik does on the back end when it's got its data protected in secure cloud is it just spins up compute transparently, goes through, pulls the index out, does searching on demand. So your restores are super quick. Costs are down. Of course, the costs are down for Rubrik. The nice thing is no matter how many searches you do or restores you do, that does not affect the cost either. You can synchronize it with your Azure AD, of course, and you can do role-based access controls of who has rights to do restores, all of those things. So it's demo time. Let me show you here. And I'm going to, oh, look at this. This is working. This is working. All right, here we go. And you should be seeing my web browser window now. And let me just confirm that. We are. Okay, so this is basically the Microsoft 365 data protection setup demo, right? So this is, we're going to walk through, you're a new customer, you just bought 365 protection. Let's get you started. All right, you log into Rubrik, their cloud platform. And, if you were backing up Azure stuff, you could back that up if you want, but we're going to set up, there's a SaaS platform, 365. Let's click it. This is great. So we're going to add a subscription. We're going to pick our region. I'm just going to, for giggles, I'm going to say, let's go. Ooh, oh, there we go. East, US 2. That's what we're going to do. And so I have to grant it access, right? So I am the 365 administrator. I have an administrator account and I'm going to log in with that now. So here we go. I'm going to log in with let's copy this guy because I'm lazy. Sign in with that, and demo cred is the password. And now this is where it says, okay, Rubrik's going to need all these read permissions to pull this data. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Accept it. And now you've linked it with your 365. We're going to do the same exact thing for our individual applications in the 365 suite. OneDrive, same thing, boom. Accept, SharePoint, accept, and Teams. All of this data is under the bucket. Some people think, oh, just my email. We store stuff in SharePoint, and not just SharePoint, the sites, but the document libraries that we access via the OneDrive client. That's our crown jewels. I mean, this protects all of that as well. So great. I just signed into all of them. Okay. So right now, what's happening is Rubrik is basically inventorying what are all my objects that I can protect and need to protect. So now I'm going to go ahead and say, let's assign an SLA domain. All right. So here we go. This is basically what the dashboard looks like, nice and clean. I'm going to apply an SLA domain to my entire 365 environment. So I'm going to check Exchange. I'm going to apply. So you could do my files, maybe I want to protect them every hour. Go ahead. I'm going to protect SharePoint. I'm going to protect Teams, all of them. Great. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here. Okay. And so now here's that concept of the SLA buckets. And you can see every rubric comes with that bronze, silver, gold. You can create your own, whatever you want, but you see they've got gold. It's going to protect every 12 hours. It's going to keep that for a year. So I'm going to pick that. I'm going to say next. And there's my confirmation. I'm going to apply gold to all of my applications. So now by default, everything in my 365 and footprint is protected every 12 hours and kept for a year. So let's go in and say, oh, we want to go ahead and I want to Aaron's to be a little different. Aaron Smith, I don't need to be so deep. So I'm going to pick him and I'm going to switch him to the bronze and assign that to him. So now he's going to be backed up daily and keep him for 2 years. It tells you what changes are going to be made and you simply assign that. Boom, success. Okay, great. Let's restore something. And typically, depending on the size of your environment, right? I mean, 10 users, 1,000 users, 10,000 users, the time to be completely protected in that first moment is variable. I'll say for IVOXY, inside of 12 hours, our first backup was completely done and we were protected. I could tell my boss, we are golden. We are absolutely backed up. So it's very quick. So let's go through and the restore. Let's go through and look what a restore looks like. So again, we're going to enter our organization. And you can see over here on the side, you got sites up here, you've got teams, but let's go to users. We're going to pick OneDrive. And we're going to pick on Aaron Smith again. And check it. Oh, I got to go. Okay, I'm clicking into Aaron. And now here's what's cool. See all those green check boxes? That's where a valid point in time backup exists. So we're going to pick the 20th. And you can see that a snapshot happened at 7:34 that night. And the indexing completed. So I'm going to click recover. So this is great. So it shows you basically the OneDrive of Aaron Smith top level. I'm going to click into it. If it lets me, and this could be a Safari thing for all I know. Oh, it's going to kill me, isn't it? Well, oh, wait, ooh, it's working now. Okay. So then I'm going to check the box of the Rubrik user guide. I'm going to try to check the box. You can all pick on me. I'm using Safari on Mac OS and probably is what's going on here. Anyway, I've checked the box and I've clicked next. So in case this thing stalls me, I think we see where this is going. In terms of the actual restoration of this, it's seconds, maybe a minute. And it will, you can choose to restore it back to the original location. You can say, put it in a different location in the cloud. You can say, zip it up and let me download it right here. And yeah, so this is probably going to stall out on me, it looks like, but maybe it's time to look at Brave. If anybody has a recommended browser, go ahead and drop it in the chat. But yeah, so the restore of this, as you can see, I'm only a couple of steps away from it. It's that quick. It's that easy. Just a super impressive, I think, aspect of what Rubrik can provide. So I'm sorry that my browser failed the demo here, but yeah, probably not happening. Okay, never mind. I'm giving up on it. Anyway, yeah, so that's, I mean, that's the demo. And how long did that take me to set that up? Not very long at all, right? And it's truly that quick. So that was the demo on that. So cool thing too, Rubrik, Microsoft 365 trial program. They offer a 30-day free trial for the M365 for your own environment. So again, it doesn't alter mail flow. It doesn't, there's nothing to lose with that, right? In that Rubrik can start protecting it and you can know within half a day, what it looks like to restore stuff from your environment. I really do consider it a no-brainer. I find, and I don't like to talk price, but it's extremely affordable. When you look at what Rubrik being really, in my mind, best of breed when it comes to backup period, and that extends to 365. Don't let them hear me say that, but I think it's extremely affordable to the point of almost being a no-brainer when you break it down. So if you want to talk about a free 30-day trial, reach out to me, reach out to your AM at IVOXY and ask about it. We'd be happy to chat about it. So I got one more poll question here. And it's kind of specific, but I'll talk about why. One thing that we offered IVOXY is called the email integrity assessment. And the poll question is, do you control your company's DNS records? Because I know some companies will outsource that. and we'll be in the middle of a project that needs to have DNS records altered, and we have to call out, put a ticket in, they change it, maybe they'll get back to you tomorrow. And meanwhile, we're sitting here like, okay, it's DNS. Yeah. So basically, it's very easy to spend money, as everybody knows, but I think it's more, the rub is in spending that money wisely. And that's why at IVOXY, we put so much emphasis on the assessment phase of any project, right? We always go back to what are we trying to accomplish here? And we keep that in mind with every phase of the project, because it stays true to what our goals are. Projects can go off into the weeds based on any number of factors, but if we stay true to what got us started here, it keeps us on track. So to that end, we have a number of assessments that we offer, and whether they're health checks of your virtual environment, network design sessions, DR workshops, our vSphere readiness, vSphere upgrade readiness assessment, right? We've got a number of them. We've recently added a new one to our stable, and I call it the email integrity assessment. So I mean, I've talked about email security a lot here, and protecting that data at all costs, but from A to Z, there's a lot that goes into ensuring the integrity of this process. So DNS is a huge part of that. And if SPF, DKIM, DMARC, BIMI, any of those terms, you may have heard of them, you may be totally familiar with them, you may not be. If it's just alphabet soup to you, our email integrity assessment can absolutely help make sense of things. It ensures that your mail flow, both inbound and outbound. And yes, I'm talking about things like outgoing encryption options, which Proofpoint includes as well. That's as secure as possible. So if you want to talk about the integrity assessment, please reach out today to myself, or again, an AM, or anybody at IVOXY, and we'll help you improve your company's understanding of its mail flow. For me, a lot of it is integrity and deliverable. I had a number of customers say, like, maybe they're using Mail Blast, maybe they're not sending out a ton of mail, but they might be sending mail through like Sendinblue or MailChimp or a gateway. And they do campaigns from now and again. They send a survey out. How do you tell the proof points out there, the filters that are receiving the mail you're sending? No, this is good. This is us. It didn't come from my mail server, but it's us. DNS is the way to do that. DKIM and DMARC says, hey, I'm basically going to say, if something fails, I don't really have a good handle on where all my mail is coming from. So I'm going to say, go ahead and accept it, maybe quarantine it. Or you can say, forget it. This is exactly where all my mail comes from. If something comes from somewhere outside of that, do not allow it in. All of those things are what the email integrity assessment can help you get your arms around and really help create a living document so you have, understand, your mail flow. Okay, folks, thank you so much for sticking with me. It is time for the giveaways here. So I'm going to do a random drawing here. 3 results. Okay. Come in. Mr. James Scales, please come forward. Leor, how you doing? Leor. And one more. Duncan, congratulations. So Jimmy's going to reach out to you in terms of making sure that gets to you. It doesn't fall off the truck, end up, in my garage. Jimmy. But yeah, so thank you very much for sticking with me till the end. I hope it was informative. This was actually one of my first webinars that I've done virtually, and I really wasn't sure how it was going to go. So it felt good. I see where we've saved a little bit of time here. I tend to speak quickly. So that's always been a challenge for me, but it's one of those things that I hope to continue to improve upon and do more of these as time goes on. But it's also one of those things that if you've got anything that you want to hear about or hear me talk about, please reach out to me. I'm imminently accessible. If you aren't already, or if you're a podcast listener, Matt Cozzolino and I do data center therapy. We try to get one out every couple of weeks. It's been stumbling out of the gate this year, but we've got 84, 85 episodes out there right now. We're trying to get them going out on a more regular basis. And that's been a lot of fun. It's 30-minute bite-sized episodes, not infomercials. We are not interested in boring you to death with a pitch on the way home. It's very topical, talking about home automation tech, a lot of cool stuff like that. And again, I'm Matt Yette. I really appreciate everybody joining me today. I really do hope to talk to you all soon. And if there's anything else anybody needs, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again. Have a great rest of your day.
Get to making with jive for sunshine. When it hits you, yes, 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 you shine. When it hits you, yes, 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 yes. When it hits you, yes, 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 you shine. When it hits you, yes, 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 you holler.